people, welcome to United View, welcome to the Tactical View, the second in a row where we are dissecting a win. Now, not as emphatic as Liverpool, not as energetic as Liverpool, not as good as performance as Liverpool, but a win or the least. So, let's get straight into it, Cam. Southampton, talk us through what their weapons were and what their team set was.
Yeah, I mean, we did one of these after Liverpool and there was a lot of stuff to say about a lot of players. Southampton, as a team, there's not a lot there. So we know the main threats, obviously, Ward-Prowse can whip a ball in. When he gets into the sort of half space, he gets a bit further forward. You know he's good in those positions. Outside of that, Aribo is very physical. That's something to watch out for. And obviously, in terms of something we can possibly attack, a weakness, Djenepo's not always been a left-back, so it's something you can really test him on. Is he going to be there positionally? Is he going to struggle a bit in that area? So as far as Southampton's team goes, it's not a lot to say, but that's probably about it, really.
Right, so us out of possession, how did we look?
So yeah, when we didn't have the ball and Southampton were playing out from the back, it was pretty similar overall in terms of the organisation to the way we set up to press Liverpool. Now obviously because they weren't playing out from the back so much like Liverpool seemed to do, we didn't get much luck in the press, but the organisation, the ideas were pretty similar. So the idea was we give the centre-backs a bit of time and space when we needed to, and then Rashford would sort of come in here and try and lock them to either that side or this side of the pitch and make things a bit more predictable for the guys behind, so that when that did happen, obviously then Bruno can go really tight on Lavia, who's normally the one dropping in, and as soon as that ball goes wide, the idea was, again, very similar to Liverpool. Obviously these fullbacks here aren't as threatening as the Liverpool ones, but the idea again was pretty similar in the sense that as soon as the ball goes wide, these guys are straight on it to try and sort of shut them down as quick as possible and stop balls coming, stop them having time to play balls in behind. So as far as pressing is concerned, that's the main idea, and obviously the starting positions of the wingers is fairly narrow to try and stop any balls coming directly through the middle. And in terms of our pressing through the game, in the sort of initial periods, there was a little bit of pressing, but sort of as the game went on,
it wasn't really the same thing, was it? Like that's what I was quite disappointed with because, okay, against Liverpool they dominate the ball, so it's easy for us to keep going and pressing.
Exactly.
But when Southampton had it, we didn't really hurry them, did we?
No, it wasn't really the same. I think especially as the game wore on, we seemed very happy to just sort of sit in this mid-block here, sit in this 4-2-3-1 shape, and rather than sort of pressing, rather than waiting for any specific trigger to then just go and engage, we just sort of seemed happy to stay in that shape. And to be fair, they weren't exactly playing through us, so it sort of made sense. But there wasn't really that sort of desire to go and win the ball.
Is it a little bit of that, like, you want to respect all your opponents, but you go, Southampton aren't really, we're comfortable with this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We make sure that Che Adams isn't going to run in behind and get balls, you know, get us turned. But other than that, we're comfortable. Was it a bit of that?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of that played into it. But also as well, I think when we did go and press, we knew that straight away within two passes, they're just going to play it long over the top anyway.
Yeah, that's what
so actually, at that point, you are just chasing shadows. So as we saw, a lot of teams have done this season. Pretty much every time they had goal kicks, they didn't really try and play out too much. It was mainly just long balls targeting particularly this channel here. And against Brentford, that was a big problem for us because obviously Martinez and in that situation, Luke Shaw didn't really deal too well with it. I think it was Fred and Eriksen in midfield. Again, they didn't deal with it too well. But what we did today and why Erik ten Hag's come out after the game and said that defensively we were so much better is because we were a lot more compact as a team. So that when those long balls did come, we were much narrower. So if they're targeting this channel, Malacia would be close, Varane would be close, Dalot would tuck round, and as a team, defensively as well, we worked back really well. So Sancho would come into that area as well, Elanga would come back to sort of create that 4-4, and then Fernandes and Rashford would also try and drop back, but obviously there, sort of Rashford in particular was focused ready for the counter-attack, but Bruno was sort of dropping in as a support player as well. But the idea here was that on second balls, when they flooded these areas, we were much, much better. And that comes from, obviously you want physicality if you can have it, but more than that, it comes from the intensity, the desire of the individual players. And players like Malacia, Martinez, Sancho as well today, to be fair, and Eriksen, when the ball's in those, and of course McTominay, when the ball's in those areas, they go and win it. Everything they do, they make sure they go and win that ball. So that was really, really important. So as much as obviously the organisation was better in terms of being really compact, in terms of horizontally, so not taking up too much space that way, but also vertically, just as important as that is the mentality, the desire of the players, when their second ball situations do arise, go and win it back and be dominant in those areas.
Well, it's interesting you say this, because I remember in the game against Liverpool when you basically, you got the situation where we had that space that was all up there like that, coming down with a cluster of players all in one part of that pitch and just making it extremely congested and difficult to play through. We did that against Liverpool. I do think we did a good job of that against these as well. And I know we'll get to when we did have the ball, but you do forget what we did out of the ball because it's like a little bit of a come down. You're like, it wasn't very good today. There was still some really good parts of defending as a team, wasn't there?
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll talk in a second once I can find, hopefully, Joe Aribo, who's disappeared somewhere off screen. Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Get him back up here. But yeah, so one of the interesting things out of possession then, so we've talked mainly about sort of how we pressed to start with, then now we've talked how we dealt with long balls, and now when we were sitting in more of a defensive shape, in a deeper block, we'll come on to that now in terms of how we dealt with things there. So what was really interesting is that sort of Che Adams was floating around, and as we expected before the game, you said last week in the tactical
preview, do it, wasn't he?
He's going to be running in behind a lot more
exactly
like that.
what he did every time.
Yeah, that happened a hell of a lot. And then also, we had Joe Aribo, and he was sort of sitting in the hole here, but he was constantly, whenever the ball got wide, whenever it got into sort of crossing positions for Southampton, Aribo was always going into the box. And it was really nice strategy that we saw today from Scott McTominay following him every time he did that. So the idea then is obviously McTominay is big, he's physical, and he's pretty good at winning headers in general. So if he can follow Aribo when he tries to be that extra man, then we've got a 3v2 in that area. We're a little bit more comfortable. So that was nice to see.
You called that, just before you move on quickly, when you said about Scott McTominay's, his assets and stuff like that, and why I think you almost said why you would play him in this game, I can't remember. Yeah. But he did that so well because I just saw him just in there. Yeah. When Southampton had the ball there, he was almost like a third centre-back. Yeah. So many times.
He was, and he did a brilliant job, but the issue that left, which sort of exposed us a little bit at times, but again, remember with...
Because it weren't perfect.
Yeah, but remember with the tactical side of the game, everything that you do is a trade-off. So sometimes you maybe give up space out wide to control the centre, and obviously the goal's in the centre, so that's often a sensible thing to do. Against certain teams it might not be if they've got great wingers or great fullbacks, but everything you do is a trade-off. So McTominay going there to follow Aribo, that left a big space in this area here. So if we highlight that area, this area here was a big space, and what was happening was El Yunusi was picking up some really intelligent positions actually in between sort of Martinez and Malacia, but also he was drifting in field a little bit. And what we'd seen is that Ericsson was trying to sit in that space because obviously McTominay's gone, he's a bit deeper. So he's got to contend with El Yunusi, sometimes Armstrong was coming in as well. But what was happening was because we've identified Ward-Prowse as one of their main strengths, Sancho was actually sitting on him here. So it meant that sometimes when Malacia tucks in as well, if the ball's on this side for Southampton, let's say Gineppo's got forward, the ball's on this side, because we're sort of defending quite narrow, it means that there's space on the overlap for Kyle Walker-Peters. So what we've done is, because Ward-Prowse is a bit of a strength for them, we've said to Sancho, okay, you watch Ward-Prowse most of the time, because he's a bigger threat, but that does then, the trade-off is that then Walker-Peters has a bit of space. Now, if you're facing a team with a great right back, as well as a great midfielder, you might say, okay, well, maybe Bruno, you can watch Ward-Prowse, and Sancho, you watch the right back here. But in this game, we went with that, and it's a trade-off that I would say, in the most part, it worked fairly well. There were a couple of chances when they did get in round the back because we're defending so narrow, and it happened on both sides, to be fair. But for the most part, I'd say that trade-off did work quite well. And defensively, for the most part of the game, you've got to say we didn't really look like conceding, did we?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm watching the game live, we're on the edge because you're in the moment live. But you're right. When I in hindsight, I'm like, we were. David De Gea didn't have any massive saves to make. No. There wasn't too many chances where I think, my God, they should have scored that. The defender leaning back gets a toe poke over the bar.
Yeah, that one they definitely should have scored.
Do you know what I mean? They probably should have scored then.
But you see that sort of thing in pretty much every game of football, and it doesn't always
get chances like that. You can't look. It's hard. Look, City was 2-0 down today. Yeah. You can't. It's almost impossible to completely shut out a team.
Exactly.
All right, Cam. That was us out of possession. What was we like in possession?
So in possession, I think this game was a really good example of one of Ten Hag's sort of principles, something that is often called minimum width. So whereas you see some managers, the likes of Guardiola, they play with their wingers sort of hogging the touchline at all points,
literally pitch as big as possible,
always on the paint. The problem with that, and one of the sort of counterpoints to that, is that if the winger is out here, you're effectively playing with a player less for a lot of the game because that winger is so far away, he's disconnected from the play. So Ten Hag uses something else, which is called minimum width, where actually, although a lot of coaches will say try and make the pitch as big as possible, Ten Hag's thinking, well, actually, if you want to engage the defenders, there's no point being out here because they're just going to ignore you. They're going to leave you alone altogether. So what he does is he gets his wingers to sit just outside the defenders, so they're close enough to be connected to the play, but also then there's space outside that they can access as well. And what that meant was that when we were building up from the back, obviously Southampton didn't really press us too much.
No, they didn't. I was surprised at that.
Yeah, they were pretty happy in general for our centre-backs to have the ball. And you could see why, because of the minimum width principle, there isn't really an easy outlet down the line a lot of the time. So it means that it's difficult for us to progress from sort of the build-up phase into more sort of progressive and chance creation phase. So what it meant was that a lot of the time we were sort of just playing the ball side to side.
It's very
sometimes
pedestrian, wasn't it? It was very
Yeah.
lethargic at
It was
times. And
really-
this was the downside of our game today.
Exactly, yeah, it was really lethargic, and the difficulty was because Southampton was so well set up with their block. These guys here, Aribo and Adams, were screening the balls into McTominay and Eriksen. Ward-Prowse and Lavia were sort of screening the balls. So this sort of four here was screening our four there. And because of the minimum width, we weren't able to have that easy out ball down the line. And it did make it difficult for us to progress the ball. However, the counterpoint, the good side of minimum width, and where it does come alive, is that when you've got wingers that are good 1v1, and they can sort of explode into the space out here, then you can start to make it work. And the other sort of thing that's really useful is that because there's so many players centrally, when you do get into a crossing position, you've got a lot of players that can flood into the box for the goal. And then also, obviously, if you do lose it in a central area, because again, there's so many players in a congested area rather than being spread out across the width of the pitch, there's more players ready to counter-press. So if Bruno loses it here, so Salisu gets it, whatever option they take, you can force them out really easily, you get players around the ball, and it means the counter-press is set. And again, this is something we mentioned quite a lot last season. The best teams in the world, the best teams in world football, set the conditions to counter-press before they've even lost possession. And this is one of Ten Hag's ways of doing it. Now the flip side, again, back on in terms of ball progression, is that because you're congesting the play, you need players that are really good in tight spaces to be able to do that. And first half, when you've got Rashford up top, that's not really his game. Dropping in these sort of tight areas between the centre-back and the midfield, operating in tight spaces.
It's the thing that Martial does so well that he doesn't do.
Martial's perfect at it, and that's why we missed it so much today. And in that first half in particular, Rashford was poor at that. Bruno Fernandes, he was just flicking it, losing the ball all the time. And when you're operating in a congested pitch like this, you've got to be precise. You can't afford to give it away. It's better a lot of the time to go back one line and find an opening somewhere else because you will have attracted players towards you. If this ball goes into Fernandes for McTominay, someone gets attracted. If he flicks it around the corner, high chance they intercept it. But if he plays it back, there's probably a space for someone else. So that's why Bruno needs to be a little bit more careful, a little bit more measured, a little bit more mature in possession. And that's why at half-time, I thought the way to unlock this defence was take off Elanga because he wasn't really doing the business. I thought Sancho, when you can get him in these areas, get him with players that he can combine with, he's fantastic. So for me, the way to unlock the defence at half-time was push him out on the wing because he can still offer some creativity and it's less of a problem if he's sort of trying things on the wing, and then get Donny van de Beek on in the centre because he's the sort of player that can draw players in and create space for your Sanchos, your Rashfords, your Brunos, and even Eriksen and McTominay coming forward. So that's the change I probably would have made at half-time instead. But by the end of it, we managed to sort of do it without making a change, and by basically Ten Hag having a go at Fernandes and Elanga. Bruno, stop giving the ball away, stop trying your stupid flicks, stop wasting time. And Elanga, remember what you're in the team to do. You're here to try and be 1v1, try and attack players. And what happened was he sort of picked the ball up in these areas. He would drive inside, and when Southampton are sitting in a block like they were,
it just attracts players, doesn't it?
Exactly, that's exactly it. Like these guys, when you're sitting in a block, you want to manage space. That's what you want to manage. What you don't want to have to be doing is going out and confronting players, because then all of a sudden that organisation that you're set up in, everyone is around you. You practiced it all week. And all of a sudden, oh no, I've got to make a decision. I've got to go out to him, and then someone else is like, oh, where should I be going?
What's that thing that you say almost every week? Force players into quick decisions.
Exactly. That's the whole point of the game. That's what Elanga's there to do. So it's seeing that from him in the second half was fantastic, and obviously one of the situations that we saw that from him in was the one that led to the goal.
Yeah, and let's talk about the goal, actually. Let's bring it up.
So the important thing here, so to start with, obviously Elanga's on the ball here, and as it goes through, we can look at how the minimum width principle really works and how it happens. And the important thing to note, or one of them at least, is looking at how many players we actually get in the box, because that's one of the big strengths. Because there's so many players central, obviously to start with, note that Diogo Dalot's tucked in there. We've seen him inverting quite a lot in pre-season.
Good to see him get back to that, because we kind of lost a little bit, didn't we?
Exactly, that's part of it. Then we've got a bit of fluidity as well with Sancho and Rashford switching over. And we catch Southampton in a bit of a dangerous moment. So they defend really narrow as well. And at this moment in time, obviously the ball's out on the right wing for us. And their midfield gets really, really narrow. And that's what creates the space for Bruno. So it's really important, again, with the minimum width thing, is that space will open up because you attract teams to be narrow, because you can sort of commit players over here. Bruno finds a great space. So as we play it, to start with there, Elanga drives in, Dalot goes wide, and because he's driven in, he's committed Djenepo. Djenepo's got to cut in.
Straight away, he's given him something to think about, because he's thinking, oh shit, I've got to go and engage. And the same here with Lavia. You just look and say, well, we've got to engage him. We can't just let him come through here.
Exactly, and even Salisu is aware as well. He's sort of starting to think, okay, if there's a pass there, can I block it? What's going on? And Gineppo overcommits massively, ignores the fact that Dallow's there. And what happens next is exposes that. So Sancho's dropped off, picked up a nice area. He's not really been picked up by any of these three.
Best thing Sancho done all game, isn't it?
Exactly, he's picked up a really good pocket of space. He's not really been picked up by anyone. And again, that's the value of having players between the lines, which this system makes. And then as it goes on, so that ball goes into Sancho. Look how it disorganises the defence. Space for Dallow out wide. And there's a big gap here. And at this point, it's intelligence from Bruno, knowing that this midfield here, the sort of midfield players, Ward-Prowse, Lavia and Aribo, they're all that side. They've all been attracted by what's going on there. So where's the space going to open up? These two are going to end up in there because Rashford's going to attack the ball. Great run. And the space opens up behind him because Elyounoussi hasn't really tracked too much. So it's fantastic awareness from Bruno. So as it goes there, Elanga, again, gets in the box.
He doesn't just stay there. He could just stay. Again, exactly. You're taking players with you by continuing that run.
Exactly that. We attack the box really well. Bruno's sort of in this area. He can see there that these defenders are getting attracted across. Rashford shows great desire to get across, and that helps us again because, look, Rashford drags Walker-Peters, ball comes across to Bruno, and it's a great finish.
Yeah. And that's the thing about it. I think what we're starting to understand is that you can set up tactically, but if the players don't have the bravery or the initiative or the intuition to travel with the ball, to attract other players into quick decisions, to actually engage players, we're going to struggle. Because you can set up, we could be lampposts within this to say, look, we're set up right. But if there isn't a willingness to take players on and commit players, then it just doesn't work. You need both.
Exactly that, and with this whole idea here of us congesting the play as much as possible, what it needs going forward realistically is it needs players that are good in tight spaces. And look, long term, Scott McTominay isn't the solution in that position. Rashford isn't the solution as a number 9. Unless he changes his game massively, Bruno Fernandes is not the solution as a number 10. Because when you're playing in these tight areas, you can't just be spamming long balls, you can't be doing random things. You've got to be trying to find passes or just recycle it. And sometimes today we did try and force things a little bit too much, and it just didn't work. The one thing I do want to see more going forward, I think we will, when we become a little bit less vulnerable on the counter-attack, is that because these channels out wide are opening up, what the wingers can do is obviously attack that space themselves, but also if they drive in, I want to see more from fullbacks overlapping. Absolutely. Obviously that's how we got the goal. I think Malacia was a little bit more reserved today because again, he's a bit aware of
saw him up here. Yeah,
not much at all, because he was worried about the counter-attack as well. So I think going forward, I do want to see a little bit more from that, from the fullbacks, making use of those wide spaces that are vacated, because obviously having players narrow attracts the defence narrow, so there is space. But again, you need players with quality delivery. And Dallow was good today, but he's not been consistent since he came, really, with his crossing final third. So again, it's one more week goes by, and we're saying the same thing again. We need the right profiles of players for Ten Hag's system.
Absolutely. Great analysis. To wrap up, I think the summary, is it fair to say that decent team performance, defensively organised, defensively structured, and the desire to defend properly and have each other's back, coupled with when we did do things the correct way, offensively, it proves what we can see, but the lack of quality and the lack of willingness to do it on a consistent basis probably stopped us having our most consistent game going forward.
Yeah, exactly. I think the important thing, and something we've not seen for a long time from United, is that when we get back, when we get into that block, everyone was together. The wingers were
behind the ball.
The wingers were with their fullbacks. They're helping them out. They're sort of watching the Southampton fullbacks if they get forward, or watching Ward-Prowse in Sancho's case for a lot of the game. So it was great to see that work ethic, great to see that spirit. And you know what? If you can't get the attacking stuff right, if you can keep clean sheets regularly, you're going to come somewhere on the right end of the table. And at this moment in time, building a record of games where we don't concede many goals is exactly what we need to do.
Absolutely. Just really quickly, because I'd like to ask your thoughts on the next game.
Yep.
It is Thursday night, under the lights, on deadline day. So Ronaldo could be gone by then. He could be on a plane to someone else. We don't know. Hopefully Martial's back, but we don't know. How would you set up for the Leicester game? Would you try to go as is, depending on what's available, keep the same sort of structure, especially the back four? Are you trying to keep that intact? Would you bring in Casemiro for McTominay straight away? What would you look to be doing?
It's a tough one. I think what I'd probably do is bring in, if Martial's fit, he definitely comes back into the team. Yeah. Rashford on the left, Sancho on the right. Unfortunately, Elanga he's done all right today, but I'd probably drop Elanga. Mm-hmm. In terms of Casemiro,
it's a really hard one, isn't it? And I know it shouldn't be, because everyone's going, what are you talking about? Yeah. Get him in.
But at the same time, this defensive unit is working. They understand each other. McTominay today, he had a different role to what he played against Liverpool. He was asked to get into that back three and really help out, and he did it well. Yes, he wasn't as good on the ball, but I think because he's doing the job defensively so well, that gives us the platform to go and score.
Or would it not work even better with Casemiro in there?
Possibly, but again, the role McTominay's doing is one where you need to understand the team, you need to understand the players around you, and that takes time. Look, I'm not going to be disappointed if Casemiro starts.
No.
You're not going to complain, are you? But
because everyone at home is going to be saying, Cam, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Get him in, 5 Champions Leagues and that, but you're saying tactically, try not to upset it, are you trying to say?
Yeah, what I'm saying is I don't mind. Whatever happens out of those two.
Ten Hag, you just choose.
I'm not calling it, whatever Ten Hag chooses, I'm going with that. Like,
so whether it's McTominay or Casemiro.
If we lose the game, it's not going to be because of that.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Yeah.
I think, unless this guy, McTominay
well, actually, McTominay's capable of, the last game where it was a bit messy, he did his thing, he was doing the Axel settings, he was kicking people down.
Yeah.
But then when we needed a bit more quality, because it was a different type of game against Leicester, I'm not trying to rein in on him because he did well today, but he is capable of doing that though.
As long as him or Casemiro don't kick it into their own net, I think it's going to be okay. And realistically, it's nice to have options. It's nice as well that McTominay, he looks like he fits. Stylistically, sort of on the ball in this sort of area, especially when it's congested, not so much, but off the ball, and that's a massive part of the game. Look, players have the ball for an average of between 1 and 2 minutes in the 90. So if he's doing the off the ball stuff right, that's a massive part of the game. So got to give him credit for that, and look, I don't mind who he starts on Thursday.
Cam basically said, I don't care, just more 3 points. That's
just
all
win the game. That's all
exactly,
I care about.
just
win the game.
And you know what? I'll take another 1-0 performance like that and get out of Leicester as well and head into the Arsenal game. Smash a like on the video, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Let us know if you agree with Cam's tactical breakdown, if you liked what you were seeing, if you have anything different to add. On top of what Cam's already said, and let us know who you would like to see start against Leicester on Thursday night as we go to the King Power Stadium for another tough away day. Leicester coming up short against a 10-man Chelsea today, but hit the crossbar. During the game as well, 2-1 down. It could have been a different game. So they've had a bad start, Leicester, and we're going there able to put some serious pressure on them, but we haven't travelled there well recently as well. They've been absolutely smoking us, so we've got to be absolutely on it. Take care, guys. We'll see you all again soon. Peace.